right now, even at 1.2 degrees centigrade of global warming, we're running a significant risk of some fast tipping points, including we're seeing the loss of coral reefs, which 500 million people depend on for their livelihoods. We're also running a risk of a tipping point in the North Atlantic circulation that within a decade could make the climate far more seasonal in the UK and Western Europe, thus reducing the growing season of major crops by 2 months or more, in simple terms, precipitating a food and water security crisis, whilst at the same time raising the sea level on the northeast seaboard of America, so Boston and New York, for example, by 10 or tens of centimeters, posing a serious challenge if we have another storm Sandy. This same tipping point can seriously disrupt the monsoon in West Africa, which many millions of people in the Sahel depend on completely for their livelihoods. If that goes, it's a humanitarian catastrophe.
We do observe that that applies not just to the broader public, but also to decision makers. So some of our research, it's very limited research that we have about what decision makers actually know about tipping points. But what we do know is that it's significantly lagging behind the knowledge we have in the sciences itself. So there is a communication task ahead of us to help decision makers engage with this concept, to learn about it, and to become more comfortable making choices about it. We're looking at the reorganization of large-scale systems that destabilize environmental and climate conditions that provide the foundations for human life and for social stability. So there's a real concern that they can kind of pull the rug out from under us in terms of how we're producing food, where we're building our cities. These reorganizations of Earth systems can have massive implications for the organization and stability of human systems.
We need to start acting decisively now to make a difference in terms of limiting the likelihood and the risk from these profound climate tipping points. And that's because it takes some time for the climate to respond to our actions. Our actions need to be a decisive reduction to zero of greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm afraid there's still a delay before that can stop global warming and ultimately bring it down. This is why action is imperative now to try and limit warming as close to 1.5 degrees C as possible. Otherwise, we're going to start seeing the tipping point consequences before I reach the end of my life, that's for sure, and potentially in the coming decade or so. In fact, some of them we may now no longer be able to avoid, but we still need to wise up to them because there's a lot we can do to adapt and to get ourselves ready for the consequences if we can't avoid them. At the moment, the tipping points that we think might be underway are, thankfully for us, perhaps the ones in major ice sheets that at the moment are unfolding slowly. I mean, the melt of the ice sheets, but the sea level rise that comes from that seems to be accelerating all the time. The contributions from Greenland and West Antarctica. So it's like a damage limitation exercise if we can't stop it, but we can still slow it down the more decisively and quickly we shut down greenhouse gas emissions, and slowing it down might be exactly what we need when the ultimate challenge is we have to relocate, we have to move megacities. Some of the most productive megacities in the world may already be consigned to oblivion by, ice sheet melt that we ultimately can't stop.
Jelajahi cara baru mendapatkan informasi. Download MetroTV Extend sekarang.